Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2019 Jeep Wrangler, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Diode wiring kit. But before we get into that, I'll just take a minute, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So before we get started, figure we touch base on this real quick. There's going to be a total of 5 main components that you're going to need to flat tow your Jeep down the road. And usually we like to be all set up behind the motorhome and everything. We got some bad weather today, so bear with us. But first one will be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with an attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So the tow bar is going to be that second piece that connects the front of your Jeep to the back of your motorhome. Third main part will be safety cables. So these will connect to the base plate and to the back of your motorhome's hitch, and those are there in the event of unlikely disconnect. They keep everything paired together. Fourth main part will be your tow bar wiring. What that'll do is plug into the front of your Jeep and into the back of your motorhome, and that's going to transfer all the lighting functions back so people know what's going on whenever you're towing down the road. And last but not least, the fifth main part will be a supplemental braking system. What this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Jeep whenever you hit the brakes in your RV, helping to bring you to a more safe and predictable stop. Since we do have some bad weather, this test box is actually simulating our RV. And so whatever signal we turn on this should translate to the back of the Jeep. So I got us plugged in here, got the left turn signal going, and let's go back there and check it out. So this is a good example. Our left turn signal is going back here, and it's going to hold true for the right turn signal, our tail lights, as well as our brake lights. We'll have all of our bases covered. In terms of what wiring is going to work the best, I usually recommend a diode wiring setup like this because once it's installed, you're not even going to see it. Super easy to hook up. You just plug it in, and it's really reliable. We rarely run into issues with these, as opposed to, like, let's say a magnetic light, for example. Those you have to stick on the vehicle, worry about scratching up the paint. Have to run your wire all the way up to the RV every time you want to flat tow, and when you're not flat towing, then you got to find a spot to store a big bundle of wire and some lights. So when you're over the road, storage goes a long way. So setup like this is just going to be really straightforward and make life a little bit easier. So there are several different kits available, and really the main difference between them is what type of cable you're going to get. And your tow bar is really going to dictate that. So for those of you that have a tow bar that does not have channels in it, so on a few of them there'll be channels on the bottom or the side where you can run your wiring and your safety cables through. If your tow bar does not have those, the best option for you would be a coiled type cable, like this one here. And this is a 7 to 6. And the point of the coil is to keep it up off the ground when you're going straight and then stretch out when you make those turns. So this one's super common. There's also a coiled 7 to 4-way round that you could use too, but my thought is if you're going to install it and everything, might as well get the 6-way round. That way if you ever want to put other accessories on or things like that, you'd have the connections. But this is an option. And then for those of you that have those channels there, you could either use the straight cable to allow you to run it through the tow bar, or there's also a hybrid kit, which is straight and then a small coiled portion at the very end. That would work as well. If you have a super long tow bar or use a really long high-low adapter or something, this one is a little bit longer, so this might be the best choice there. And then there's also a 4-way flat to 4-way flat kit. These are pretty uncommon, but if you have a relatively old motorhome or something like that, this might work for you. And then there's a kit that kind of comes with the bare bones, all your wiring and your diodes and some connectors and things like that, but it doesn't come with a connector plug or a cable at all. And the point of that is some of these more premier type tow bars will come with a cable and a connector, like the Roadmaster Nighthawk, for example, that tow bar. So if you have a tow bar like that, get the bare bones kit. That way you don't have to buy an additional cable that you really don't need. Other than that, at the end of the day, a kit you really can't go wrong with. This is the one I usually always recommend. Like I said, because they're reliable. We rarely see them come back for any issues, and we do a ton of these. So I've got faith in them. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad, not super complicated per se. It is time consuming just having to run wires and things like that, but you know, you do it one time and then you reap the benefit of having a super easy setup when you are ready to flat tow. But if it's gonna be something, this is something you're gonna be doing yourself, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and hook it up together now. To begin our installation, we're gonna be here at the front of our Jeep. And I took one end of our bundle of wire and just ran it through our bracket that came with our base plate. And take the rubber dust cover they give you, slide that over, and then we can separate our wires here. So just carefully cut in between them, pull them apart a little ways, you know, a few inches is usually adequate. Then we're going to strip each end back a little bit as well. So about like that'll work. Give the wires a good twist. And I'm going to do that same thing for the rest of them. If you grab our connector plug on the back of it, it's labeled. Might be kind of tricky to see, but we have TM for tail light, so the brown wire will go there. GD for ground, so the white wire will go into that one. This is LT for left turn, so the yellow wire will plug in that. And then RT for right turn, so the green wire will go there. So the way these work, they're just set screws. Take a small Phillips head screwdriver, back them out almost all the way. If you end up pulling them out all the way, it's at times these are easy to lose and kind of tricky to get back in. They're just so small, so that's why I do it this way. And we'll just take the appropriate wire, place it into the terminal there. And tighten on the set screw. We'll do the same thing for our remaining wires. This is the way the connector plugs it'll look once you have the wires hooked up. And what you can do is apply some sealer to keep everything sealed up and prevent corrosion. I like to do that at the very end once you verify we have everything working. That way if there's an issue, we don't have to deal with all that sealer and whatnot in there. So for now, I'm just gonna slide that over and just kind of temporarily secure this to our bracket here. Now we can start to route our wire coming out of the plug. So we're gonna run it into the engine compartment first. So here's where it comes through our little rock guard. And it's going to go up towards the driver's side and run up through the opening into the engine compartment. Now in the engine compartment, our wiring is going to run straight back to the firewall here on the driver's side. And once you get to about the corner, you can cut the white wire in half. All right, so you want to take the half or the side that is connected to our 6-way connector in the front and strip back the insulation. The remaining portion of the wire, you know, the other side that you cut, you can just peel that off of the big aluminum wire there. And you want to hold on to it because we're going to be using it a little bit later. You take a ring terminal, slide that over the bare end of the wire, crimp it down, and this is going to be a ground. Where I chose to ground this is right there in the corner there. There's a factory ground post, and it's going to work out real well. So what you can do, take a 10mm, remove this nut here. With the nut removed, you can then take your ring terminal and your ground wire and slide it over. And you know, when you're setting up these flat tows, try to think ahead. If you happen to have any other wires that are going to need to get grounded in the future, like one for our braking system, now would be a great time to put that on and hook it up as well. That way, we only got to do this once. That's exactly what I'm doing, and we'll get the nut tightened back down. far as the rest of our wiring goes, that's just going to drop straight down along our firewall to the underside of our vehicle. Underneath our Jeep now, you can see our diode wiring drops down, and when you're routing wires, you want to do your best to avoid any hot or moving parts. So that wire's going to come along and then kind of go on top of our frame, and you can probably see a little piece of it there. There's some heat shield wrapping around some factory lines. I kind of tucked it in behind there just to keep it as protected as possible, and just kind of followed that along the way, zip tying it occasionally. Like I said, it's behind this, just tuck it in behind this heat wrap. It just follows that all the way along. Here's where it comes out. And then essentially there's these brake lines. Just kind of followed those. Where it comes up. And it goes up and over this brace here. You can kind of see a piece of it there. It just continues along, and I have it kind of pushing at an angle towards our driver's side, where it's going to drop down here. All right, and then so at this point, I separated the green wire from our yellow and brown, and that extra piece of white wire that we had left over from hooking up our ground, I taped one end of it to the yellow and brown, and this will eventually run up into the taillight pocket on the driver's side. The other end of the white wire, as well as the green wire, those are going to run over towards the passenger side. So with those, we have our cross bracing here. I just ran the wire on top of it and zip tied it, every now and again. Up through here, where it's going to come out through this opening. I have it kind of tucked up there, but it's going to come out in the same opening that it did on the driver's side. What we need to do now is remove our tail lights. And so these are going to be held in place with one fastener located just on the inside of our Jeep. We're going to have this access panel. You can take a small flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry up on that to pop it out. And that'll expose a 10mm head fastener. Pull that out, and we can move to the outside and get the tail light removed. And we're able just to pop our light out, and we're going to disconnect it. It makes it a little easier too. There's this wire kind of snapped into the housing. Let's take a trim tool or a screwdriver and just pry that out. And then there's going to be a red tab. Push back on that and then down on the center, and it'll release. We'll set this light off to the side and do the same thing to get the other one removed. So what I've done is there was some tape covering up these wires. Just peeled that back. That way we could test them and figure out what ones we need to use. So the yellow wire, we're going to be using that for our stop and turn signal. And then the white wire with the gray stripe, that's going to be our taillight signal. And be careful too, because there's another white wire with a gray stripe. It's thinner in diameter. You don't want to use that one. You want to use a thicker one there. So what we're going to do is cut these about in half like that. You can strip back the end. And on each end of the wire, we're going to take a blue terminal, slide that over, and crimp it down. Yeah, same thing for our 3 remaining ends. So I got all of our ends set up here, and then you can take 2 diodes, and there's sticky tape on them. I just stuck them together. And the side that has a single terminal, that's going to plug into the factory wiring closest to the connector plug, like that. I'll just go color for color. So the white and gray will go to the white and gray, and then the yellow will go to the yellow there. And then you can grab your new wires that we ran and just push them right up into the opening here. The new yellow wire, I just crimped on a blue terminal. The white and brown wire, what you're going to do is actually strip them back and then twist these together. So you're going to twist it up, nice and tight. That way, maintain a good connection. Then you can take the yellow terminal, slide that over and crimp it down. And then with the factory yellow wire, controlling our stop and turn, that's where the new yellow wire is going to go on that diode. And then our taillight signal, that'll go to the last remaining terminal there. With all these diodes set up, we can go ahead, plug our light back in. Don't forget to push that red tab back in. That'll retain that connection. And we can reinstall this the opposite way that we removed it. Now over here on the passenger side, I essentially set all this up the exact same way. Really the only difference is going to be the color of wires you're going to use. So this green wire, factory green, that's going to be our stop and turn. And the factory white wire with the orange stripe, that's going to be our taillight signal. So our new white wire that we ran over here, that plugs into the diode with the white and orange wire. And the new green wire that we ran, that plugs into the diode with the factory green wire. So pretty straightforward actually, almost color for color. So like I said, set them up the same way and get our light plugged back in. Now we can test our wiring to make sure it's working properly. So I just plugged into a test box. You can use your motorhome, but keep in mind if your motorhome has any issues, it could mislead you into thinking it's something we did on the Jeep side. But I'll turn on our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Diode wiring kit on our 2019 Jeep Wrangler.